for today's cup of coffee, we're hoping that this one little kitty doesn't fall off the arm of the chair.
It's Kiska, the unbalanced one.
He is very unbalanced. God love him. Not all cats are graceful.
Especially him.
It's like he just sort of rolls off of things. We don't know why.
He does. He's got some severe balance issues.
Yes, it could be an inner ear thing. I think it's been going on with a lot of us lately.
It's something. Okay.
So, anyhow, what we're going to be talking about for today's cup of coffee.
Example A.
He's rolling off. And this individual is known as the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Ed Gein.
Oh, Ed Gein.
It's Gein. I will tell you why later.
Gein.
I understand.
Gein.
I'm not the only one that pronounces it as Gein. I've heard it pronounced either way. But I will tell you why.
Those of you who are pronouncing it as Gein are wrong. It's Ed Gein.
Anyhow, he was born as Edward Theodore Gein. This is Gein. The pronunciation here is Gein. So
they're wrong too.
No one knows. And he was born on August the 27th of 1906, and he died July 26th. 1984. He died the day after my birthday. So at least it wasn't on my birthday. And Ed Gein has been the source of myth and legend for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. And actually, if you really start studying his story, very piteous, great psychological study on not only him, but the whole family dynamics. Uh-huh. And, you know, how is it that some people can deal with trauma and not go batshit crazy, and yet others do?
Was he the one that inspired Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
He inspired quite a few. And I've got that included in here also. This comes from Wikipedia, and it was very comprehensive, which I appreciated.
Okay.
And he had an older brother, and Henry was his name, and then his father was George Philip.
Damn.
There were some very odd noises in here. We don't know what the hell that was.
That might have been downstairs. It might have been the... Oh shit, who's downstairs? It might have been one of the totes.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh god.
If we hear it again.
Oh god. If we don't hear it again, there's an issue. Oh god, I have to go down there and check.
No one blew up.
We don't know that. Hold up.
There were no bodies found downstairs, so everything's okay.
No cats were injured.
In the making of this process. And I actually should have started this out with a disclaimer. If you have a weak stomach again, you might want to skip this cut because this goes into some gruesomeness.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a gruesome case.
Well, it is a gruesome case. And it's fascinating, but... you know, it's gory. That's all you can say. Anyhow, Ed's mother's name was Augusta. That was probably part of her problem to begin with.
Okay.
And it says that she hated her husband, who was an alcoholic and unable to keep a job. He had worked at various times as a carpenter, a tanner, insurance salesman. He had owned a local grocery store for a few years, but sold the business. And they finally left the city to live in isolation on a 155-acre farm. And Augusta took advantage of the farm's isolation by turning away outsiders who could influence her sons.
Yeah.
Now, when you're totally isolating kids, that's there's a difference between being family oriented and being like weird.
Yeah.
Unhappy weird. And the only time that Ed left the farm was to attend school. And it says that he spent most of his time doing chores on the farm, and that his mother was fervently religious. She preached to the boys about the innate immorality of the world, the evil of drinking, her belief that all women, apart from herself, were naturally promiscuous and instruments of the devil. She reserved time every afternoon to read to them from the Bible, usually selecting verses from the Old Testament and the book of Revelation concerning death, murder, and divine retribution. Yeah, that's a good representation of God.
Yeah, totally.
That's not going to do something odd to small children. Yeah, let's black pill them.
Totally not going to fuck them up in the future.
No. What this description of her reminded me of was in the movie Carrie. Mm-hmm. Carrie's mother.
Yep.
So that could be another one that was based on this that they didn't credit at the end. It says that Ed was shy, and his classmates and teachers remembered him as having strange mannerisms, such as seemingly random laughter, as if he were laughing at his own personal jokes. To make matters worse, Augusta punished him whenever he tried to make friends. Despite his poor social development, Ed did fairly well in school, particularly in reading. And I actually went to school with a kid that in some ways similar. Now, to my knowledge, she didn't end up mass murdering anybody, but some of the ways that they're describing his upbringing, it unfortunately is not rare.
Right. Yeah, we know it's not rare.
And on April 1st, 1940, Ed's father, George, died of heart failure caused by his alcoholism at the age of 66. Henry and Ed began doing odd jobs around town to help cover living expenses, and the brothers were generally considered reliable and honest by residents of the community. While both worked as handymen, Ed also frequently babysat for neighbors, and he enjoyed babysitting and seemed to relate more easily to the children than to adults.
Mm-hmm. I wonder why.
Yeah. Henry began dating a divorced mother of two and planned to move in with her, and he was worried about his brother's attachment to their mother and often spoke ill of her around Ed, who responded with shock and hurt. Well, you got to remember, his brother was older, so he was able to see the situation a little more clearly than Ed was. On May 16, 1944, Henry and Ed were burning away marsh vegetation on the property, and the fire got out of control, drawing the attention of the local fire department. By the end of the day, the fire having been extinguished and the firefighters gone, Ed reported his brother missing. With lanterns and flashlights, a search party searched for Henry. Well, no shit. I did not write this. Whose dead body was found lying face down. Apparently, he had been dead for some time, and it appeared that the cause of death was heart failure since he had not been burned or injured otherwise. It was later reported by a biographer that Henry had bruises on his head. The police dismissed the possibility of foul play, and the county coroner later officially listed asphyxiation as the cause of death. The authorities accepted the accident theory, but no official investigation was conducted and an autopsy was not performed. So there's a little bit of question of whether or not Ed killed his brother.
Yeah.
Because he spoke ill of the mother. So Ed and his mother were now alone, and Augusta had a paralyzing stroke shortly after Henry's death. So Ed devoted himself to taking care of her. Sometime in 1945, Ed later recounted that he and his mother visited a man named Smith who lived nearby to purchase straw. And according to Ed, Augusta witnessed Smith beating a dog, and that there was a woman that was inside the Smith home who came outside and yelled for the man to stop, but the man did not continue and finally killed the dog.
Oh my God.
And says that Augusta was extremely upset, but not by the dog being killed, but because that there was a woman in this man's home that was not his lawful wife, and so she referred to the woman as Smith's harlot. She didn't even know these people.
Yeah.
So Augusta later, after her rant, had another stroke. And so after that, her health deteriorated rapidly, and she died on December 29th, 1945 at the age of 67. Said Ed was devastated by her death, and in the words of Harold Schuster, he had, quote, lost his only friend and one true love, and he was absolutely alone in the world, end quote. Gein held on to the farm and earned money from odd jobs. He boarded up rooms that had been used by his mother, including the upstairs, downstairs parlor, and living room, and he left them untouched. While the rest of the house became increasingly squalid, these rooms remained pristine. So he had sort of set up like his own little museum, mausoleum, whatever you want to say. Ed lived thereafter in a small room next to the kitchen. Around this time, he became interested in reading pulp magazines and adventure stories, especially those involving cannibals or Nazi atrocities. That's always some healthy reading there. And
yeah, totally.
He was a handyman and received a farm subsidy.
Sorry to put you to sleep.
You really, farm subsidy from the federal government started in 1951. He occasionally worked for a local municipal road crew and a crop threshing crew in the area. And sometimes between 1946 and 1956, he sold an 8-acre parcel that his brother Henry had owned. On the morning of November 16th, 1957, it says Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Warden disappeared. A Plainfield resident reported that the hardware store's truck had been driven out from the rear of the building at around 9:30 a.m. The hardware store saw few customers the entire day. Some area residents believe this was because of deer hunting season. Bernice Warden's son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Warden, entered the store around 5 p.m. to find the store's cash register open and bloodstains on the floor. Frank Warden told investigators that on the evening before his mother's disappearance, Ed had been in the store and that he was to have returned the next morning for a gallon of antifreeze. A sales slip for a gallon of antifreeze was the last receipt written by Warden on the morning she disappeared. On the evening of the same day, Ed was arrested at a West Plainfield grocery store, and the Washara County Sheriff's Department searched the Gein farm. Now, here's where we get into more gruesome. What was discovered was the decapitated body of Warden in a shed on Gein's property, hung upside down by her legs with a crossbar at her ankles and ropes at her wrists. The torso was dressed out like a deer. Now, in case you all have never been around deer hunters or anything like that and how the carcass is prepared, once you see it, it's anything, hogs, if you're doing hog killing or anything like that, that's just standard procedure. And the reason that you hang the carcass upside down is so that the blood can drain.
Yeah.
Kids looking at me. He was not a hunter.
Never.
No, well.
Never.
But if you never need to know, it's okay. But it's best to know if you ever do need to know. So, anyhow. No. And so she had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and the mutilations to the body were made after her death. So she was already dead, as opposed to some of these people that are worse than Gein ever thought of being and would have done that to somebody while they were alive.
Right.
He wasn't trying to be intentionally cruel. I don't believe that. Searching the house, authorities found whole human bones and fragments, a waste basket made of human skin covered several chair seats, skulls on his bedpost, female skulls, some with the tops sewn off, bowls made from human skulls, so that's probably where the tops went. A corset made from a female torso skinned from shoulders to waist, leggings made from human leg skin, mask made from the skin of female heads, Mary Hogan's face mask in a paper bag, Mary Hogan's skull in a box, Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap sack, Bernice Warden's heart in a plastic bag in front of Gein's potbelly stove, 9 vulva in a shoebox, I don't even want to go with that one, a young girl's dress, and vulvas of 2 females judged to have been about 15 years old, a belt made from female human nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, and fingernails from female fingers. These artifacts were photographs at the State Crime Laboratory and then decently disposed of. But were they really, or are they sitting in someone's collection somewhere?
More than likely they're sitting in someone's collection, because there's no way no one would ever not keep
too
something
odd.
Like that.
Yeah. And it says that when questioned, Gein told investigators that between 1947 and 1952, he made as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies while he was in a daze-like state. Now, remember that part. On about 30 of those visits, he said he came out of the daze while in the cemetery, left the grave in good order, and returned home empty-handed. On other occasions, he dug up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women he thought resembled his mother and took the bodies home, where he tanned their skins to make his paraphernalia. Gein admitted to stealing from 9 graves from local cemeteries and led investigators to their locations. State Crime Laboratory participated in opening 3 test graves that had been identified by Ed, and he had described 2 of the exhumed graves that were found empty. And on one of them, there was one casket that was empty, and then there was one casket that Gein had failed to open when he lost his pry bar. Now, how do you do that? I guess he dropped it down beside of it and he couldn't find it.
I guess so.
I thought that was kind of odd.
It is odd.
And most of the body was gone from the 3rd grave, yet Gein had returned rings and some body parts.
What the fuck?
That's what it said. And it said that soon after his mother's death that Ed began to create a woman suit so that he could become his mother, to literally crawl into her skin. Ed denied having sex with the bodies he exhumed, explaining they smell too bad. So no necrophilia for Ed.
No.
And during the State Crime Laboratory interrogation, Ed also admitted to the shooting death of Mary Hogan, a tavern owner missing since 1954, whose head was found in his house, but he later denied memory of the details of her death. A 16-year-old youth whose parents were friends of Ed's and who had attended ball games and movies with him reported that Ed kept shrunken heads in his house, which Gein had described as relics from the Philippines, sent by a cousin who had served on the islands during World War II. Upon investigation by the police, these were determined to be human facial skins, peeled carefully from corpses and used by Gein as masks. Well, a shrunken head is a carefully peeled face of somebody.
Yeah.
That's why I told you, no, you can't have one of those.
I can have a monkey one, though.
That's a monkey face.
I can have a sloth one, too.
Gein was also considered a suspect in several unsolved cases in Wisconsin. During questioning, the Washara, I was doing so
idea.
good, and it's like, and then they throw me these words. County Sheriff Art Shaley reportedly assaulted Gein by banging his head and face into a brick wall. As a result, Gain's initial confession was ruled inadmissible. Yeah, like cop beating the shit out of a crazy old dude, it's going to help, you know. It says Shaley died of a heart attack at the age of 43 in 1968 before Gein's trial. Many who knew Shaley said he was traumatized by the horror of Gein's crimes, and this, along with the fear of having to testify, especially about assaulting Ed, caused his death. One of his friends said, quote, "He was a victim of Ed Gein as surely as if he had butchered him," end quote. Bullshit. He was a bully with a badge, and there ain't nothing else that can be said about that.
No, we are not, sympathizing with what he did. We are not.
There's no need in beating the hell out of somebody. That is not going to help anything or anybody.
No, but we're not saying that we sympathize with Ed Gein and his atrocities. No, he did a lot of...
Absolutely. The man...
But he did not deserve to get the shit beat out of him by a cop.
Ed Gein was crazy. What is the cop's excuse?
Exactly.
Anyhow, the trial took place on November 21st, 1957, and he was arraigned on one count of first-degree murder, and he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Gein was diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent, thus unfit for trial. He was sent to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. A maximum security facility in Waupun, Wisconsin, and later transferred to the Mendota State Hospital in Madison, Wisconsin. In 1968, doctors determined Gein was mentally able to confer with counsel and participate in his defense. And the trial began November 7th, 1968, and lasted 1 week. A psychiatrist testified that Gein had told him that he did not know whether the killing of Bernice Worden was intentional or accidental. Ed told him that while he examined a gun in Worden's store, the gun went off, killing Worden. Ed testified that after trying to load a bullet into the rifle, it discharged. He said he had not aimed the rifle at Worden and did not remember anything else that happened that morning. So right there, as far as him not being able to accurately recount the events. So, yeah, this was not him playing an insanity defense.
No, he actually was insane.
Horribly so. And it says at the request of the defense, Ed's trial was held without jury, and Judge Robert H. Gulmer presiding. Gein was found guilty by Gulmer on November 14th. A second trial dealt with Gain's sanity. After testimony by doctors for the prosecution and defense, Gulmer ruled Gein not guilty by reason of insanity and ordered him committed to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. And Ed spent the rest of his life in the mental hospital. And he was just charged with the one murder because there was no point. He was getting life in prison in the hospital for the criminally insane. Mm-hmm. What more needed to be done?
Yeah.
Because he was not going to get any kind of parole or anything like that.
And to my knowledge, he only murdered one person.
Oh, no.
No?
No.
I thought he just dug up bodies.
Where were you while I was reading
right
this?
Here. I thought he just shot that one girl.
No, you missed it. Anyhow, Gein's house and 195 acres of property, which was appraised at $4,700, it's equivalent to $42,000 in 2020, plus his possessions were scheduled to be auctioned on March the 30th, 1958, amidst rumors that the house and the land it stood on might become a tourist attraction. Early on the morning of March 20th, the house was destroyed by fire. A deputy fire marshal reported that a garage fire had been set 75 foot from the house by a cleaning crew who were given the task of disposing of refuse. That hot coals were recovered from the spot of the bonfire, but that the fire did not spread along the ground from that location to the house. Arson was suspected, but the cause of the fire was never officially determined. It is possible that the fire was not considered a matter of urgency by Fire Chief Frank Worden, son of Bernice Worden, Gein's last victim. When Gein learned of the incident while in detention, he shrugged and said, just as well. Gein's 1949 Ford sedan, which he used to haul the bodies of his victims, was sold at public auction for $760, which was the equivalent of $6,800 in 2020, to Carnival sideshow operator Bunny Gibbons. Gibbons charged Carnival goers 25 cents admission to see it. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, why not?
Yeah.
And Ed died at the Mendota Mental Health Institute due to respiratory failure secondary to lung cancer July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. Over the years, souvenir seekers chipped pieces from his gravestone at the Plainfield Cemetery until the stone itself was stolen in 2000. It was recovered in June of 2001 near Seattle, Washington, and was placed in storage at the Washaratz County Sheriff's Department. The gravesite itself is now unmarked, but not unknown. Gein is interred between his parents and brother in the cemetery. Now, in popular culture, Gein's story has had a lasting effect on American pop culture, as evident by numerous appearances in film, music, and literature. And the tale first became widespread to public attention in the fictionalized version by Robert Bloch of his suspense novel in 1959, Psycho. And then, of course, Alfred Hitchcock, his adaptation in 1960 of this. Mm-hmm. And Psycho is an amazing movie.
It is.
And you can very much, it's just, I mean, you think about Norman Bates. Here he was very unassuming, very pleasant. Who would have ever dreamed? But the mother was very much as Ed's mother was described, that domineering, you know.
Yeah.
It was screw these kids up from the get-go.
Yep.
And there was another movie that was called Deranged in 1974. I haven't seen that one.
I've never heard of that movie.
In the Light of the Moon in 2000. Haven't heard that one. Ed Gein, The Butcher of Plainfield, 2007. Ed Gein, the musical, in 2010. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So we'll have to look for that one. And then, of course, Rob Zombie films, House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects.
Where's Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
I ain't got to that yet. And it says Gein served as the inspiration for a myriad of fictional serial killers, notably Norman Bates, Leatherface, of course, from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill, Silence of the Lambs, and then the character Dr. Oliver Thredson from the TV series American Horror Story Asylum.
Yep.
And this is interesting. American filmmaker Errol Morris and German filmmaker Werner Herzog attempted unsuccessfully to collaborate on a film project about Gein from 1975 to 1976. Morris interviewed Gein several times and ended up spending almost a year in Plainfield interviewing dozens of locals. The pair planned secretly to exhume Gein's mother from her grave to test the theory.
Oh my
But never
God.
followed through on the scheme and eventually ended their collaboration.
No wonder.
It seems like they
That's
were.
horrible.
It seems like they were a little inspired on some of this stuff.
Just a little bit.
And it says, after the news reports of Gein's crimes, this spawned a subgenre of black humor called Gainers. And even as far as shock rock, they had songs. There's one entitled Dead Skin Mask, and that's from Slayer's album Seasons in the Abyss. Mudvayne's album LD50, which with the song Nothing to Gain. That's how I know it's pronounced that way. And then Ed Gein from the Ziggins album Rusty Never Sleeps. There's also a band named Ed Gein. I actually knew that. I don't know that I've ever heard anything by them, but I did know that they existed.
Okay. I mean, that's cool, I guess, you know.
Well, I think that like when you go back and you see some of these movie characters that were based on that, like I said, the fact as Carrie, you can very much see her mother as based on Ed's mother.
I mean, I'm sure in this area there were quite a few people like that.
Well, yeah.
Which is horrifying.
It is horrifying as far as the isolation of these children, so that they couldn't get a different perspective on what was going on to them. That's not uncommon to isolate kids who are being abused.
Yeah.
Whether it's psychological, emotional abuse, physical abuse, all that stuff.
What'd you think, Kiska? You got anything?
And for, their mother to, because that she hated the father, to take that out on the kids.
That was just flat out wrong.
Right.
Never. If you have an issue with the father, don't take that out on the kids. It's not their fault.
She apparently had her own issues, and that's not uncommon. Also, especially earlier in earlier times, where women felt that a man was their only source of income and different things like that, and that they didn't have any place to go, and the stigma of being divorced. and a whole lot of excuses.
Yep. Rather than being like, fuck you.
Absolutely.
You're not doing this.
Absolutely, and going on, because there were always places that somebody could have gotten a job. So
Factories,
I think it was
especially back then.
Sure, it was the fear itself of doing nothing, and also there was this horrible stigma of so they can't keep a man. They don't have. Okay, and
your point.
Yeah. So
what about it?
The culture has changed greatly, and there were reasons that the culture needed to change. Mm-hmm. But as far as these kids, and that's where it always ends, is these kids being horribly traumatized and then doing other things. The fact that he had those blank moments, I wonder if he did not have some kind of dissociative disorder.
He could have. More than likely, he actually
like schizoaffective or something like that.
He definitely did have like a dissociative disorder, because it's very blatant right there.
Right. The fact that he did not remember what had gone on with that. It's dissociation doesn't occur just in DID.
No, and it's usually caused by some sort of
trauma. Because you've got the schizophrenia, and then you've got the schizoaffective, all these different things like that. When you start studying different mental illnesses and mental health conditions, and how that occurs, not just in individuals, it's not just a biochemical whatever.
Right.
That can contribute to it, but a lot of it is, nature or nurture on some of this, and how that family dynamics and family systems can very much contribute to a mental illness becoming fully formed.
Yep.
And whether these kids and these people have access to proper services that could prevent them from going into, I don't want to say full-blown mental illness, but it can lessen the severity of it sometimes. When a kid that's going through hell on this earth has someone to talk to, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a religious figure or something like that, just as a source of strength. Mm-hmm. Because kids who are being abused, usually they're not going to tell someone else. And then you have, when they get older, why didn't you tell someone? Because kid brain. Especially if somebody that's abusing them is telling them, don't you tell or worse will happen. That's frequent.
Yep, absolutely it is. And
my personal views of this, now y'all can disagree with me. Somebody that hurts a child, I think they have forfeited their life on this planet.
I agree. I absolutely
that, or they need to have body parts that are mended greatly.
We ain't gonna talk about which parts because YouTube guidelines.
I didn't say which parts, but now I have talked as far as asking therapists and stuff, and they said because it is not an act of sex, it is a act of power, control, defilement, that even if you removed the offending body parts, that would not prevent them from harming a kid in the same way. They would just use another object. So that means that this person has forfeited their life on this planet.
Yep.
Now we'll pull a thing on that, change my mind.
I don't think anyone's going to fight on that.
Because I have worked with too many kids and too many adults that are survivors of that stuff.
Yep.
So again, and there is a piteousness about him. I'm not saying what he did was right in any way. No. I'm saying this is what happened to someone who had a diseased mind and diseased spirit.
No, what you're saying basically is this is what happened due to, you're giving an explanation as to why he ended up the way he did.
Absolutely. The same thing with Jeffrey Dahmer. Mm-hmm. There's quite a few of them that are like that. And it's like the fascination with serial killers is very much similar to horror movies. It's almost like a controlled fear. There's a fascination with it, as long as it didn't happen, as long as you were not involved in it directly.
Or anyone that you knew was involved.
Right.
It's almost like going to a museum, sort of.
Sure. There is a morbid fascination with these things. it is fascinating. How can someone do that? What would lead them to do things like that? And that was the basis of this discussion, is to say, okay, these are reasons why this could have happened. And to have empathy. Now, he was exactly where he needed to be, which was in the home for the criminally insane. He did not need to be out in society again.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people like that. But as far as throwing them into jails and prisons where these people are untrained on dealing with any of this stuff, no, that's not the solution.
Nope. But.
So, let us know your thoughts about egg Gein. Hopefully that has not inspired anybody as far as art projects. Do something else. Do something else on that.
Wow, I have actually seen some
taxidermy
Etsy listings for replicas of Eddie Gein's
I can see
face
that.
lamp.
I can see that, but they're not. It is a replica. It's not using someone's actual face.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And the thing is, he was not doing this as an act of defilement. In some ways, it was
preservation almost.
It was preservation, but in some ways, it was almost like a relic. Mm-hmm. You know, as far as like relics.
A Holy Grail sort of type of thing. Relic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's...
Someone has to have those objects, though, hidden away, though.
You know they do. You know they do.
I know for a fact they did not burn them or something.
No.
It's in something locked up away.
Now, would I want to own any of them? Absolutely not.
I would like to see them.
Would I see them? Yes. I mean, even as far as the energy and stuff, the energy is probably going to be pretty foul on those things because of murder victims.
I mostly literally just want to see the lamp.
Yeah.
I want to see the lamp only.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting. So, if you've had experiences with paranormal,
we can someday visit
supernatural,
the Museum of Death.
I have no problem with that.
Has a lot of relics from serial killers.
Yeah. Well, it's not so much the serial killers, because some of them are interesting. Some of them really are not. Some of them, when they got caught, and they faced the consequences, I have no problem with them, and we'll discuss some of those other ones at some point, because some of them are interesting. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, supernatural, paranormal experiences with UFOs, aliens, cryptids. I pray to God nobody has had experiences with serial killers for real.
And if you have, I am so sorry. We are both so sorry.
And
thank God that you're safe now.
Right. If you've got local, regional, family myths, legends, anything like that, you can send us an email to cupofcoffeewithscream@gmail.com. And thank you for taking time today. Thank you for sharing a cup of coffee with us.
Yes.
And know that you're loved.
Blow your nose if you have to.
Yeah, he's having a really hard time, sinus. It was like 20 degrees here with the wind chill factor this morning, and I think all of us have sinus issues.
I had to stick my face in a face steamer. That's
all right. Yeah. Face steamers are handy.
They are. Anyway, don't forget to like, comment, share, and blow your nose. And subscribe.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Blow your nose. Use good tissues. Use puffs.
Bye.
Bye.